We'll get rid of that. Hide bookmarks bar.
Oops.
So like last time, we have the Spectrum post for the to kick off the server meshing playtest round 6. They called it Test E. So the post from Wikipedia and then and then a note from Wintermute, who was one of the network team people. And then all of these up here at the top are comments, and this isn't even all of them. This is just the ones that I thought were the most important. What's that?
Link to the timeline.
Oh, perfect. Thank you.
All right.
Open in browser.
No. Fortunately, NASA's not getting married. Everyone will freaking absolutely know when I have a significant other, because there's no way I'm gonna be able to talk about it. Like, and there's no way that they're going to not be able to be on stream. They will be tied to a chair and forced to stream with me.
Naz a sugar mama or sugar daddy. I don't care. Someone who can support Naz's ambitions and let him be his free nerdy self and live the dream. You just gotta let me be me, babe. You gotta let me pursue my dreams. So the latest tech preview was on October 10th. So today's the 14th. So that was last Thursday. Yep. This one I wasn't able to get in. Did you get to test it all, Naz?
Was this the one that went up to 2000?
Yep. Yeah, last Thursday. Cool.
Yep. I was there.
Yeah. I was on duty all day on a 24-hour
That's right, because it came out one day after you wanted it to. That's right.
Yep. Again.
Yep.
Yeah.
I remember. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I got in, or yeah, I got to play each phase. There was
awesome.
a 1 to 100 phase just to like validate that. Yep, servers definitely still work. Then we went up to 1,000, and it was like, hey, this is a thing. But it was like it worked though. Like all the things that needed to worked. Desync was obviously atrocious and all the other things, but it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, okay, it's pretty bad now, but it functions. So and it was like, as much time as they spent validating 100 players, they validated 1,000. Like, okay, spent half an hour, we're kicking up to 2,000. And that went about as well as it sounds like it did. But it was interesting. It only broke down after you got close to that 1,000 players. I was on a server with only like 500 players, and my server personally only had like 50. It was so smooth. Like it was you didn't notice you were in this giant mesh.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like the server info up all the time. And it was this test specifically that added a player count number where you can see in the details in the server info, or the R.
Yeah, you had the shard info. / and then the number within your server within the shard.
Yep. So you had population of shard, population or / population of your server that you're connected to, or the DGS you're connected to. So I didn't get into any of the super high population servers, ones.
Right? 6 for the 2,000.
I'm sure they'll say which 6 to 800. 6 to 8 is what it dropped down to. So no.
Or no, it's 10 2,000, wasn't it? Yeah. 10,
it was 10 2,000. Yep.
It
actually doesn't say that what. Yeah, it doesn't say in here what they went up to.
Mm-hmm.
It only says we went up to 2,000 players. Yeah, but it was server meshing. Like it was it was like there wasn't like wow, I see the future. It was tech works. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Like I guess we're here now. And like where it lands and how many players can connect to the server, and the server, like there's not a lot of taking apart that we can do to the server configuration and server performance now, because static server meshing is not where we're like, it's not the destination. It's the gas station on the way to the destination. The fact that we were able to set up a mesh with 2,000 players and all in Stanton. Like that's great, and they found a whole bunch of reasons to optimize each server, the mesh, and each DGS and all the services. But we're heading towards a place where they can do that all while live because they can shut down different parts of the mesh independently.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be dynamic, and yeah, it's exciting when you dig into it. It's really exciting to think about, to realize, oh, that's what this is. This is capable of X, and compared to
We
what
get
we've
Ramos
been.
guest.
Yeah. Um. So like all of this is pretty much the same. It hasn't changed much. It was still on the 3.24 build. Pardon me. Access to everybody. Started at 1 to 100, went to 6 1,000, 10 2,000, and then 6 800.
Yep.
If I remember correctly. Yeah, in terms of number of servers and max player count. And we'll read down here what
Wintermute.
Wintermute said. So Wintermute says, "Hey folks, thank you all for joining us today for more server meshing testing. Below you'll find a few notable changes in this build, and this is changes from the previous test. If you have any feedback to share or encounter any fun new issues, you can leave your feedback here, and I'll pick it up." Notable changes: stability improvements, including addressing the crash we had seen in the last test that was occurring at high player counts. So that was part of what they had. So that's part of the reason they went to 10 2,000, because they wanted to validate to not only did that crash, make sure, hey, the crash isn't showing up at 6 1,000. We want to make sure that the fix that we have continues up at 10 2,000. That we've addressed it completely. It isn't just we fixed it at this player count and this configuration. And it was a hybrid service crash, and the reason they needed to make sure that was fixed is so that way the hybrid, when we get to dynamic server meshing, and there can eventually be instances where a mesh with a single replicant gets up to higher player counts than 1,000. They want to make sure that the hybrid doesn't fail, or the services within the hybrid don't fail. Replication layer being the biggest one, doesn't fail and crash. And ruin the game experience, disconnect everything. Even though it might chug and not perform well for seconds to minutes while they spin up another replication layer, additional services from within the hybrid, more servers, what have you. They want to make sure that it stays up. It might chug for a minute, but it needs to not crash, it needs to not fail. We have made changes to the territory distribution algorithm, which distributes them distributes the territory amongst the DGSs in the mesh. This should make for more balanced DGS performance across the mesh. And this was an issue I noticed in not this last one that I wasn't on, but on the one before, where when I was in Lorville, I had great performance. And then when I left Lorville, it went down. It was still good, but it went down. And so they're just working on fine tuning the algorithm to make it so that way you don't have big changes in performance when you go from one server to another. And
interesting, because in this test, it was the exact opposite. I had terrible performance all up until I hit the border outside of Microtech.
Yep, I saw that on multiple people's reports.
Mm-hmm. The second I got out of Microtech, it was perfect.
Yeah,
and it was the server FPS was locked at 30.
And that's the hard part too is, they don't want to lock it in where, okay, these servers are hard covering these areas, because they know after a certain amount of time people will distribute naturally, and it won't that first rush of people logging in and then getting to their hangars and their ships and moving about and doing things will make it so that way a server will be bogged down at first, but then once things smooth out and people are all over the place, they don't want the servers that everybody started out in, at the landing zones, whatever's covering the landing zones, to then not have any responsibility or very little, and be performing, amazingly well, while the servers that everybody is at, for further locations within, the universe, not be performing well. And so it's a hard balance to strike because, like you said, Nazarus, it's not dynamic; it's static. And so whatever they put the shard up with is what it's stuck at until the shard comes down.
Yep.
Um,
And,
so
and there's the thought, but basically, like, they really want to get past this as soon as possible. And they also, there's their thought, they have the analytics on what the average distribution of the universe is. They have the analytics. That's why they're setting it up how they're setting it up.
mm-hmm.
So they know not day one, but day 80 of the game where everyone's going to be, where the base distribution is of all the players and what they're
The
doing.
players and the entities, like what they've left behind.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's probably where they're aiming this version at, where while in the landing zone, yeah, it's going to perform a lot worse, but that's because on day one, everyone's in a landing zone. Day 80,
Yeah.
10%
And even
of
after
people
the first hour or two, like, you're gonna that first rush when the shard goes up is gonna be rough. But then once people spread out a little bit,
Yep.
then as more people log on later on, like it'll it will be you'll get a spike and it'll level off, and then it'll taper off down and normalize. And so
Tim Pasta
they
asked, "Do you
they
think
can't do
AJ
anything
expects all
about the
players to
spike.
go for one spot?" Yes, I expect they expect exactly that, because you tell someone that, hey, it's gonna be really bad if you do this thing. The second they get on, they're gonna say, hey, everyone meet in this spot. Everyone get in this one elevator, this one ship, this one landing zone. Absolutely, they're gonna. Everyone on a server is gonna try and get the same spot. And the
Yep.
entrepreneurial, no, where's the word? Oh no, enterprising. The enterprising community beacons around will definitely try and see how big they can make different community events. Whether
And
it's
it's a good
just,
thing,
let's see how many people we can get at
Yeah.
an outpost, or giant land battles, combined arms battles. Who's it, like, was it Sis and Kate that does the like combined arms, like they turn Stanton into a game board and they have different teams fight over territories.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Sis and Kate. Um, yeah, there's definitely gonna be all sorts of players and community content creators and community members doing absolutely anything they can to, like, take advantage of higher player counts.
Yeah.
Like, what happens when everyone shows up at a jump point? What happens if you storm the jump point?
I don't think we're going to see login queues for shards. Like, there might be a queue on day one as they are spitting up shards, but once the
Yeah.
shard is up, like, and that's the thing, is everybody thinks, oh well, they're gonna do 1,000 player shards and they're gonna need to put in a queue. No, they're not gonna do 1,000 player shards. The game can't handle that. Even when the replication layer is at its best, the game is just not going to be able to handle it. But then there's so much about the game that isn't ready for that level of player count. Um, that's why they keep going back to the
Oh
four
no, the
500
new
and the
deal
six
with
eight
its
hundred.
2 terminals.
Yeah, there's
Oh.
a lot of things that need to scale, and so, like, they're gonna launch with a 5 to 600 person shard, and then you don't hardly need a queue. The issues with landing zones and habs and hangars are minimal. Are they going to happen? Yeah, but is it going to be as bad as with 1,000 people? No, not even close.
I have a sneaking suspicion that,
But
and
they
this is
will
kind
need
of
to
a,
address that for dynamic server meshing. And,
yeah,
like,
I have a sneaking suspicion that stuff, that are like the problem with not enough beds, the problem with not enough screens, the problem with not enough hangars or doors, um, is something that they have and they know what they're going to do about it. They just haven't told us, and maybe it's something that they're going to talk about at CitizenCon. So continue watching. We're
one.
going to talk about CitizenCon later.
So I was at uh oh gosh, the dang habs in New Babbage.
Aspire
Um,
Ground.
Aspire Grand, right? Yeah. If you go to the window in, like, the sort of hallway area outside the hab,
Mm-hmm.
and you look out the
Mm-hmm.
window, and look at the rest of the building.
Mm-hmm.
The hab area that we have in the building right now is like not even a third of the interior space of that building, and
Not
there's
it's
windows.
barely a tenth. Like
Well,
there's like dozens of
it
floors. We have like 5.
yeah, it's like there's 10 floors, and each floor has 5 habs, but that space only it's in the shape of an H, and so there's the two. We're at the center part of the H is where the habs are now. There's this
Mhm.
leg and this leg over here, and if you look out the window, you can see they all have windows, and they're all faked, the faked windows that they put on there before. But all that is space that they can put habs in with hallways and elevators. And if you ever, you go down to the elevator and you realize to the lobby and you see, oh, there's like 6 or 8 elevators in here, but I always pop out of the same one because there's only one elevator and one gate. If you go, there's only one elevator running right now, essentially, or very few. So
Yeah.
they built it to scale. Um, they did this with the hospitals when they added, I think it was Maria Pure of Heart, and there was like the round 2 hospitals or something like that. But they added more beds to the hospitals. Um, and the hospitals are able to scale. The habs are able to scale, especially for the ones in it's Lorville and Area 18. You don't have a window, right? But Mike New Babbage and Orison, you have windows.
Right.
But the buildings themselves have room for way more habs.
Mm-hmm.
Probably, that you could. It's probably we're probably at most a third, but probably more like a fourth or a fifth of what the building is capable of holding in terms of how many floors and then how far out into the building the floors can go, even with the windows and such. And the
Yep.
lobby has 6 elevators. The other thing that they can do and probably will do is if you go through an elevator in a space station versus if you go through an elevator at a landing zone hab, how long does it take you at a space station to get from one location to the next?
Couple seconds.
It's seconds most. But like when I go through the hab, it's like a real elevator. And so they can
Mm-hmm.
shorten that time down. They can fake it. Um, because for in terms of like a second or two, that's an eternity for the replication layer to move your character, 4 characters in their gear from one floor to the next. Um, they'll need
They
to
need to
expand the
expand.
spaceports a little bit.
Yeah,
They'll
Babbage
need to
is
add more
actually a
hangars,
really weird place
but that's
because
easy.
it is.
You
Well,
add more
Babbage is
monolithic
weird.
buildings into the mountain, and you add the
Yeah,
gateway there.
they have to add more building in
Yeah,
almost all other places. Yeah, they could put more stuff in Lorville's. Um, so Babbage and Orison are kind of at a weird spot where they're going to need to add more art to the exterior to add more to the interior. They
well,
are
it's not
they're out
interior,
of space.
but like, yeah, they need to. But if you look at where some of the hangars are for New
Hmm.
Babbage, they are buildings that are not attached to the main spaceport.
Some
And
of them, yeah.
yeah, you can go fly over it, and you're like, oh, there's a door. There's a big old door, and that building's not attached. And they can just add more of those. It's not a huge
Yeah.
big deal, and at a 500 player shard, it's
Those
really not
tall
that big a
spires
deal.
only have, as far as I've seen, an XL and a large. Because I've landed on them because I have a reclaimer, and I've landed in them before. Like they are used.
Yeah, GQBD. I totally get what you're talking about, but it's really not necessary for a 500 player shard. And so it's one of those things where at a 500 player shard, maybe a brief queue
Yeah.
at best. But when
And
there's
we're about to talk about the after
yeah
action report anyway. So
yeah we'll get there. We'll
yep.
finish reading this. So, additional performance data capture. We have made some changes on how we gather performance data to include more information about what a specific DGS in the mesh has streamed in at the time of a capture, and this will help us when tuning performance. So and one of the comments up here at the top is going to talk about that in order to see what is really to fine tune what is impacting server performance the most. And you're going to see what Benoit talks about with that, and what things they add and do in order to improve server performance, in relation to what things are streamed in. So if a server is performing like garbage, like, okay, what is streamed in on that server and what is impacting it the most, and how do we mitigate that? Display info, we talked about that, the number of players in the mesh or in the shard and on the server. Many more behind the scenes changes which may not be noticeable but continue to improve performance and stability, as well as laying the groundwork for functionality that will arrive later. UTs. So,
AKA dynamic.
yeah, that's what, and they've been saying it, but without saying it, that these tests are not just for 4.0 and static server meshing. They are getting. Naz and I were saying this like a year or two ago. You know,
I can see a future, and I'm pretty sure I said this, that like even when 4 was supposed to be Q3. I can see a future where there is a at least tech preview of dynamic before the end of the year.
I wouldn't be surprised. It would not catch me off guard whatsoever. So I put all these comments from Benoit, Balt CIG, in time order. So starting at 111, he's replying to someone. Depends on the gameplay experience. Some locations don't support that many players. In fact, many locations. We just talked about that. A lot of locations in the game don't have the support for that many players, because they didn't want to waste time on the art, and B, when that location is streamed in, and it's not, it impacts the server performance. And so if you had, 4 times as many habs and 3 times as many, hangars, etc., at each location in Stanton right now, it would negatively impact server performance for no gain. Oh, yep.
Ignore
I
it.
think it's pinned. Yeah, GQBD. I think that post is pinned in the Star Citizen discussion. So let's. I saw it before. I had to restart my computer, so I need to scroll back up. So let's find what Curso is asking. There we go. Balt, if this goes well, will you push beyond 1K for 4.0? Depends on the gameplay experience. Some locations don't support that many players. In fact, many locations.
Means no.
No, they're not even going to go. I will be infinitely surprised if they go for 1.0. I don't know where people keep getting this idea when they have told us that we're testing at these levels in order to find where it breaks and find the optimizations.
I expect way more by 1.0.
Oh yeah, 1.0 for sure. But wait.
Okay, so rephrase what you just said, because you just said 1.0.
No, he said 4.0.
Yes, but you had said I'd be infinitely surprised if they did that for 1.0. Then you said or 4.0, even 1.0. What did you mean to say? You'd be infinitely surprised if you'd see that for 1. Or 4.0. You'd even be surprised if you saw that X.
Or no, are you talking about me responding to your comment about the tech preview for dynamic?
No.
What are you talking about?
So you went and read Corso's comment, and he asked if they'd be shooting 4,000, and you said you'd be surprised, infinitely surprised, if they did that for 4.0.
Yep.
And for some reason, you followed that up with saying, I'd also be surprised if they did that for 1.0.
Did I say that? No, that's not what I meant.
You did. That's why I'm confused. Okay. Like,
yeah,
I expect that. Like, I have hopes for like 10,000, 100,000 for 1.0. Like,
oh yeah,
basically, we don't know where dynamic lands.
Yeah, shards will be much bigger.
Yeah, it hinges on the problem that Ashes of Creation sidestepped, and that's the bottleneck of the replication layer. How many clients can a replication layer serve? That's the bottleneck we have to worry about.
The other thing is like so Ashes of Creation sidestepped the replication layer, but they also didn't. Because like they are doing what Paul Reindell said in 2021, 2022 that CIG couldn't do, because eventually when you have too many connections, you can only scale up what Ashes of Creation is doing so much.
Right.
You
That's
know, and
that's
that's
that's and that's what we keep saying. Like everyone's implementation of server meshing is going to be different. Every game has things like Ashes of Creation and Star Atlas and Dual Universe all said that what CIG is doing is impossible. CIG has said that what Ashes of Creation doing is impossible. Why? Because it's a completely different implementation for a completely different outcome of the tech. Nobody can do the same thing. This is why you won't see a server meshing tech built into um a game engine. Because when a game like you can't
Unreal
support
6.
like a Halo mesh and a Candy Crush mesh. They're completely different games. You need completely different things to support them.
Well, and yeah, that's the level of fidelity and data transmission needed for a medieval first person swing swords, shoot arrows, do magic, versus a
And
space
build towns.
MMO.
Don't forget to build towns.
Yeah,
It's the
but
only reason I'm
it's
interested.
yeah, um, night and day different. But that's like I don't know why people think that they're testing 1,000, so that must be what they're going for. When
They don't.
CIG have deliberate, but it's because people haven't read what Benoit's been
Yeah.
saying, you know. And why would they do 1,000 players if the locations don't support it? And why would they delay 4.0's launch, in order to update those locations when they can just launch it with 500-600 players and the game will perform? Like, if you were on those tests, you know how well it performed. And as they continue to do these tests, that will continue to be updated and refined. So a 500-player shard for 4.0 could perform really well and be really stable compared to what we've had before. And that's two and a half, that's for per system, that's 2.5 times what the total player count is. And you could get all 500 players or nearly that into one area essentially within a system. Like, that's nuts. It's a
Yeah.
huge leap. But it also, like, that's a huge leap and not that many steps in between that and dynamic server meshing. um,
Yep. Eric
so
is supposed to be able to get
depends
server
on.
meshing into Unreal 5, I believe. Now, yeah, I was thinking about that when you said I haven't actually looked into that at all, and I haven't heard anything official. Even like I keep decently close with. I even watched a lot of their last presentation. I didn't hear anything about the actual server meshing stuff.
It's basically Unreal 6 is combining that plus Unreal 5 and a whole bunch of other things that they've updated and stuff. But
But Unreal
like,
5 just came out like last year.
well, it's no, it's older than that. But it's
Unreal
they've been
5 just
showing
came out
Unreal
like last
5 for a couple years. But that's the thing, is like nobody's built a game for it, or a real game, or a game that can
year.
take advantage of any of that. Like, it'll be ages before someone comes up with a good game
Apparently April
that takes
22.
advantage,
2 years.
that comes up with all that. Um, but yeah, so the locations don't support it. The game doesn't support it. There's no need. It would be a
Uh,
waste. Um,
Unreal Epic Game expects Unreal Engine 6 by 2026 or 30.
so this has Benoit talking about they disarm. I don't know what that means, but it's referring to the fix that they had for the hybrid for the 1K player test. Um, we're checking ship spawns at the moment. Um, that was the issue. Is another issue that they're having is being ships, people being able to spawn their ships, and the gateway issues. But the cool thing is they're able to put out hot fixes for this stuff for a lot of it at the basically at runtime. Um, Benoit at 222. As Waka mentioned, we are preparing the next stage. Even though many issues were observed, we want to push forward with a 10 2K setup, which we will leave on for a short time before heading back down. Like I said, they're wanting to validate that the hybrid fixes that they put in and their optimizations held up under even more load. That it wasn't something that, okay, we fix it at this level, but it'll crop back up at this level. Now, expectations are that the experience will be very rough, but we want to validate a few hypotheses which would need even more channels opened. Um, so they're also testing a hypothesis in regards to performance, with more channels. So they're channels in that you have the more servers and more clients connected to the replication layer. Benoit 228. We're also cooking a client hotfix for a crash we saw you guys run into during the previous phases. It should be available later in the channel. It's got to cook a full build. So they would implement it once they restarted the shards. So there's a lot of people reporting client crashes. And so those things weren't showing up until they got into the higher player counts. And so they were able to diagnose that at runtime and address it within the test. So that's pretty great. And Benoit says, just repeating for the next phase, we expect 2K for to be very rough. Let's see, keep moving forward. And so Benoit says, very interesting observations at the moment for performance and stalls at those numbers. So this is the 2K test, looking at performance and stalls, because they're looking at that data in real time to see, okay, this is, doing it at this level is showing us places that we can continue to optimize, the performance for the mesh, in ways that the lower tests did not reveal those things. That's why they keep doing these tests, and where these stalls are and how they can continue to optimize it. And then at 323, we've raised a few values to see if we can squeeze more throughput around an issue. We'll see if that helps. And so, like I said, they're tweaking this stuff. Not only, we found a client crash and we're going to push that out with the next build for the next part of the test, but they're also actively tweaking, when he talks about throughput, the way the RMQ pushes information through to and from the replication layer to see if that can allow them to overcome an issue that was being seen at those high player counts. 324. Let's see. Benoit replies to a question from Rorik's Blade. Combination of things mostly around throughput and parallelization on the hybrid, which is what we keep optimizing day in, day out. More in the post-action report. So let's find that question because I read it before. Rorik's Blade. There's Rorik's. Oh, there we go. Rorik's Blade asks, Benoit, are you allowed to tell us what that issue is? This was the issue that he was talking about the previous comment, the issue that they're trying to find a workaround in terms of getting more throughput, in order to circumvent an issue. And so Benoit's reply was, it's a combination of things, mostly around throughput and parallelization on the hybrid. So how parallelization, like how many parallel data channels are they able to send information
how many lanes
through?
of traffic?
Yeah, they're trying to avoid gridlock like in LA traffic or Washington DC traffic. And so how many lanes of traffic can they open up, and what can they do with those lanes in order to alleviate the gridlock, to allow information to keep flowing and not stall and back up? Because when you get the stalls and when you get the the information stopping, you have traffic. That's what causes the interaction delay, the desync, and so but they only have so many lanes of traffic and they can only do so much, and so it's a matter of not only having the appropriate lanes of traffic, but putting the appropriate dedicating certain lanes to certain types of traffic, and then prioritizing, which lanes go when, as if they're like merging. The RMQ is directing traffic in order to keep traffic flowing. And this is Benoit replying to that. Results of the last change are inconclusive for now. Some effect, but we see some loss still. Discussing with team about next steps. So they're continuing to try and figure out, how do they get, can they get around that? What options do they have? And then 345. Okay, guys, we got enough data for the higher range. We'll be reeling back to 6,800. configuration and keep capturing data at this level. And as a reminder, the previous tests, they've reeled it back to a 4 and 500 configuration. Um, so they're seeing that they're using this in order to get even more long-term data in terms of performance, because they kept it up for like 24 hours, to see how this configuration performs as players are able to actually play the game, as it's performing, and leave ships and gear and other stuff lying around, and entity count starts to go up and such. Let's see, and something about the client hotfix. Um, so this was kind of interesting. Benoit said at 4:03, when the servers are up and you are hopefully able to get into the verse and spread out, please try to experiment a bit at the boundaries of transition. So where, like now you were talking about how your experience, you're leaving Microtech and then going out into space, and you had big sweeping changes in terms of performance, and so they wanted to see what people's experience was at that transition point, because if you're just quantuming and stuff, it kind of gets hidden pretty well, but they wanted to see people interacting around that transition point to make sure that, if you remember from the demo last year at CitizenCon, things were being transmitted in real times if they were all on the same server, and so they want to make sure that's working because, um, based off the configuration, the transition zones were a lot closer, were the around the planets essentially, um, and so there was potentially a likelihood for interaction, space combat and people doing stuff. So they wanted to make sure that the handing information back and forth at that transition point, um, worked smoothly instead of just um, oh, I quantumed and I arrived. Okay, what happens when there's 10 people, fighting here and lasers and bullets and missiles are flying? So someone asked, what is the DGS setup? And Benoit said at 4:04, there's a DGS for Stanton. And I think when he says Stanton, I think he means like all of space in Stanton. And then it's hard to know because they talk about things differently. But I think he was saying there's a server for Crusader Space, Microtech Space, ArcCore,
Yeah,
and Hurston,
when
right?
2042 was testing it, it was when you leave a planet, you transition to Stanton, but
Mm-hmm.
when you go to one of the moons, you get back onto the one with the landing zone.
Okay, so it's the space in between is one server. The moons in orbit of a planet are the same server as the planet itself. So there's four. There's the one for the space in between, and he said he couldn't remember the last one, so don't know what that sixth server was managing. Oh
I'll
boy.
see they haven't fixed. Hold on. They haven't the whole C they haven't fixed it for the whole cargo patch, which they have several times. Never released other cargo ships, Zeus CL, and now they're going to sell you all base building ships and new cargo ships and new cargo ships. Yeah. I'm sorry.
How
Do you not want a base building ship? Do you not want cargo ships?
it's the oh gosh, what
That's a
logical fallacy
completely
is
like
this? The ship
yeah.
team doesn't stop building ships, especially ships for other gameplay, when there
Cindy.
are all sorts of different teams that have to work on fixing gameplay features. It the whole scene not working with docking could be doing, and cargo loading unloading could be due to any number of different issues. They've talked about this
Especially
so
server
many
problems.
times. Server issues. It could be a networking issue. It could be something to do with the docking tech. It could be something to do with the way the stations work. The way the cargo is loaded, unloaded. There's so many different things, and there could be so many different things that cause these issues. You fix one, and that reveals, okay, well, there's these ones. Like that's not how this works, and I don't know how many times CIG has to explain that, Cowboy.
Concept artists are not technical artists. Not same people.
Yeah, and yeah, they do consult with each other when they're building the gameplay, but like the ship teams don't have any bearing on fixing a
Well,
gameplay feature.
even within the ship, like even within the ship team, let's say that the whatever bug for the Hull C today is a vehicle specific bug, right?
Yeah,
So that's the ship team problem. But the guy who or girl, person assigned to fix a technical issue, a coding problem or a feature problem, is not the person who is drawing the concept art or designing the concept art or the lore or the logos for any of the ships. Never, nowhere near the same person. Like they're on opposite ends of the entire ship team. And those concept people, one, they are always employed. Two, they can do literally 20 concepts a week. It just their job is specifically get work done, move on to next concept. And the
false
designers
dilemma.
are in charge of making sure they have concepts to draw.
Yep. Yeah.
And
And does it suck? Everybody who has a whole C wants their whole C to work. They'll get it
I have a Hull
fixed.
C. I just bought one in game the other day. I love
Yeah.
it. It's so beautiful. I love
They'll
having
get
a
it
Hull C.
fixed. It is what it is. There's plenty of things that have been broken and taken a while to get fixed. You know, it sucks. I get it. But the wheels keep turning.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah. Like, it. If you want them to stop selling ships, you want the game to fail. That's at this point. That's where we're at.
I want the first round of cargo to be done before a new line.
Done. It's
Huh?
done.
Yeah. Cargo's in.
Taurus. No, not even. Constellation Andromeda. Done. That was the first line.
Yeah.
We
What?
have cargo missions. We have hauling missions.
I don't know what
We
you're
have
talking about
reputation.
of cargo. These things are not mutually
We have
exclusive. One thing does not
MPVT.
stop the other.
And PVT is now
Yeah.
in stores, in game stores. I'm so happy. I'm
Yeah.
so excited.
Yeah. That and there are lots of bugs, and it's going to take a while.
Whole C
To get-
D&E are not coming in for the foreseeable future because they have no idea how to build an economy around it at the moment.
Yeah. We're that's not something we need to worry about, the whole D, because we're not going to see that for a while. You know, there's no need for it. You know, they'll fix the cargo stuff with the whole C. It's pretty unique, and what they had in game before it broke was also a very placeholder. So it's a matter of, do they fix that, or are they going to be able to get what they really wanted in terms of freight elevators? You know, because that's like you parking at a UI element in space and ship, you know, just disappearing isn't what they want for that
Yeah.
gameplay.
No,
They want
they
you
want
to
ships
dock
that fly out,
and
and they
have a
want
freight
the
elevator,
MPVTs to
yeah,
pull the stuff off.
or use your tractor beams
Aether, I
and
don't think it's a
stuff.
childish mindset. Like everyone wants like their Endeavors, their BMMs, their whole Ds. Like everyone wants their ship that they pledged for way back when. Like it's not a dumb thing to want what you got
And want it
like
to work.
and want it to work. Yeah, it's
Yep.
but you also have to contend with the like reality of it's an in development project. We're still in alpha, as people love to hate on that. We shouldn't be saying we're still in alpha 10 years in, but guess what? We're still in alpha. That is not an excuse. It's a reality.
It's the
It's
technical
not
definition.
something to. Yeah, it's not something because like, well, we'll be in alpha forever. No, they're working on getting us out of alpha right now. There's an entire panel. The last panel of CitizenCon is, hey, this is our plan to get out of alpha and to fix all the stuff that people have problems with. And until then, any bug that's in the game is fair game to leave alone till 1.0. Because
Or at least
like
on the road
stuff
too.
like yeah, stuff like ship naming or ship bin numbers or the customization they had with the 300i or weapon balance this, ship balance that. Any of that is left alone for eternity until they have time to bring it to that 1.0 standard where they finish whatever balance and they make the feature go wide on all the ships.
This
It's
is
an
why
alpha.
this is why it's so important to follow the development just a little bit. if all you do is watch ISC and SCL, you will have all the context you need in order to have the appropriate mindset for how things work and what's going on. You don't have to read all the monthly reports. It's helpful. You don't have to read all the dev comments like I do. Like the dev tracker, I've been reading that all day long. I'm folding laundry and reading the dev tracker. I'm changing diapers and reading the dev tracker. I'm running critical care calls and reading the dev tracker as I'm doing my charting on the way back, because I definitely wouldn't read the dev tracker while somebody's dying. But so it's but it's these things are not mutually exclusive. It's a false dilemma. Like, I don't want CIG to stop building ships and vehicles for other gameplay things just because medical's at tier 0.
Yeah, there's also it's also really
Yeah.
hard for especially the D&E, because that's the problem is squarely not on the ship team for this, and there's not enough space for the economy that those ships need.
Yep.
For it, like stuff like the E is almost 100,000 units of cargo. Nowhere in Stanton are we moving 100,000 units of cargo, especially not anywhere in Stanton. That is a multi-stop, across the entire empire kind of run. That is where you pick up like an entire planet's worth of farming supplies, an entire planet's worth of water, an entire planet's worth of like hydrogen and ship parts, and you drop it at like Earth or something that has no current exports. Or no current exports because it's overpopulated.
Yep.
Or maybe it's stop at these like 50 satellite bases that the UE has put together for Synth World. This is not I'll just go do a hauling mission today. This is a multi-day ship to get whatever one run you're doing. It's 100,000 1 units of cargo. Like what is that? What is that?
Well, let's keep moving
somewhere.
on
It's
with the server meshing stuff.
9,800
I feel like we
divided
beat that dead
by.
horse.
That is 3,000. Over 3,000 32 SCU boxes.
No. Cowboy, that's not true at all. um, and
No, you will not need this much
no,
from base building. No way.
no, not a snowball's chance in hell.
If we are wrong,
Imagine,
come back to us after
yeah,
CitizenCon, because they're going to talk about base building a lot. All right, moving on.
yeah. I just want to know what the last server was. If you had space, and then the planets, the planets with each with their moons in orbit. What was the last one? Was it the stations? Like, that's what I want to know.
Why does Bolt not know?
Yeah.
You think
And
Bolt would know?
4:39 p.m. Okay, guys, we're going to leave this configuration overnight for all to experiment, and that's the experimenting part is the part that's interesting. To see what does how do things perform over 24 hours or whatever. With actual people gameplay and doing stuff. A lot of captured logs and data to review from tonight's tests and configuration level is going to be a big day in the office tomorrow. Looking forward to an after action report. We'll be getting to that in just a second. So that's one of the things. There was a lot of reports about crashing to desktop. I've had it from multiple people in my Discord who were trying to play. And so they're going to be looking into those crashes, because not only do they have to, make sure that the mesh is performing, but that it doesn't, with server meshing in a server mesh environment, that it doesn't create issues client side that they have to address. And so you can't be like, oh, well, server meshing is working, but 4% of the people when they connect, run into this issue and they crash. So they have to be able to maintain essentially client side integrity. This one, Locky 9. Well, this is a good one. Most of the changes we do for the tech previews get integrated into 4.0.x as we go along. So
Okay.
let's see. Where's the
this
question?
This is the misconception one. A lot of people read this as not 4.0, but 4.0.12345. And we will get back to why that doesn't mean 4.0.12345 and why that actually means 4.0 when we read the after action report.
Can we expect the population counter to get added to future builds, or is it only for meshing testing? And where did it go?
Yes. You passed it.
There we go. Most of the changes we do for tech previews get integrated into 4.0.x as we go along. So this is also saying that as they are testing server meshing and tech preview, they are updating the 4.0 build that they have internally and now in Evo,
which is
as they go
hilarious
along.
because we like the testing preview or the testing channel has been so far on a 3.24.
I think it's
Was
just
I think it was
3.24. It's
previous to
not
2.4. No, it was not 2.4. It was 2.3. It was a 2.3 build.
Oh, you're talking about
Because there were
earlier in the year.
no, even this one because there's a lot of QOLs that are in 3.2.4 that were not in the tech preview. It was hilarious. Like I keep like the biggest one was the inventory camera. Is the big one they fixed where in 3.2.4 it spawns behind the character. In 3.2.3 it spawns in the wall. And every time you open it up in tech preview, it spawns in the wall. So they've been running like 4 different code bases, and we're like going to see all 4 of these collapse into one build by 4.0. It's amazing. They've been doing such hard work.
But that's the thing is people thought that the tech preview testing, like they couldn't start 4.0 testing until they got the tech preview testing done. Like they have to finish tech preview testing before they get a build. And it's like, no, once they get it to a point where they think it's ready, they integrate it because they said that like a couple of reports, after action reports ago, and they'll continue with. We did the Evo test on this weekend, right? Yeah.
Yep.
And so I don't know if the Evo test had the fixes that they did. It won't have had the fixes from this most recent test, but the next Evo that they do will have the optimizations and fixes that they implement from this test that they just did. And then they're going to do more tests, and they're going to continue to implement the fixes from the tech preview into Evo, and we'll see why here in just a second.
I can imagine that we're actually done with the preview channel till 4.0.
Well,
so they can focus on getting it through Evo and. Right. Anyway, moving on.
So I'll read to the first half, and then if you want to read from new observations down. So server meshing test E after action report. Hello, captains. Back with another server meshing test E post action report directly from the server meshing strike team. Meshing test E was conducted on SC's birthday, October 10th. Woot. This test included 10 major hybrid fixes that were encountered at high concurrency in the last test, which prevented us from pushing forward. Other optimizations are still underway, but we did not make their way into the build. Our objective in this test was to measure the behavior of the hybrid at 1,000 player concurrency.
More woot.
Hey, 07 Riggsy, good to see you. Shortly after initial launch, a new crash was encountered related to client subscriptions. I don't know what they mean by the subscriptions.
Client subscriptions are when a client connects to the server. It subscribes to a server.
Related to the client subscriptions. Interesting. Fortunately, this was a configurable fatal error and was able to disarm it. That's the disarm he's talking about temporarily and continue with the test. So that's good.
I imagine it's subscribing as in I subscribe to like the data stream of this server.
Yeah, it's kind of like subscribing to an email list.
Yeah. Yep.
And continue with the test. While more optimization opportunities were observed, some key measurements show great progress and stability even at high numbers. So even though it may have felt like it wasn't performing well for you, aspects of the mesh were performing well for the mesh. It just might not have been visible to the on the player side, and so but they continue to see places to optimize that we will continue to benefit from those improvements. Throughput and latency were not always at the rendezvous. We're not always at the rendezvous. Nevertheless, the team wanted to use the opportunity further and push to 2,000 concurrent players cap to measure stability and shake out new crashes. So, like we said, they wanted to make sure it was stable at higher levels. They wanted to see if there were other crashes or previous crashes that cropped up at those high levels. As expected, the 2,000 player test was especially rough, but valuable performance captures will allow progress. Yay, progress. That's what matters. The same gameplay observation from test C and D carry over.
Nice.
Yeah.
New observations in test E. When a 1,000+ player concurrency, or when at 1,000+ player concurrency,
before you continue, so the same observations from test C and D carry over. So if you go back and read those reports, the observations carry over into this report. So they are tracking certain things. Continue.
Okay. Long loading screens were observed across many players loading late into the game, caused by waiting for a free hab to spawn in. Would nice to see this on screen, aka he will talk to people and see if we can get like a hey, waiting for hab icon up on screen so we can see if the game's still working.
Yeah. And he's referring to this for the tests. They're going to continue to do tests at 1,000 plus players. So they want to get a queue in so people don't like Alt F4 thinking that something's frozen, so that people know. But it doesn't mean that they're going to put the queue in for live.
Right.
And
it could.
It could. But also, if the queue is in here in order to mitigate issues with 1,000 player concurrency, you wouldn't see it at live with 500-600 players, or would hardly ever see it. So
yeah. So even if they put it in and they left it in, the chance of you seeing it would be however much the servers. So they could just leave it in and just if the server ever gets high enough, you just see it.
Yep.
Fine. Move on. Looking to see if a queuing mechanism to ease the spawning process can help. Also looking at other spawn options. More on this later. I imagine they're going to try and let people spawn on stations.
Either stations or in hospital beds, or both.
Or both.
But again,
that's a good point. I didn't think of that one.
People are going to take this and say, "Oh, they're going to let us do this in live." No, it's to allow you to test, to let things not interrupt the testing process.
Yeah, because we are having a really big instant tab is going to be a little bit of dev time, and it ultimately up to them if that dev time is worth it. Do they want to do instance? Because the plan for building interiors entirely, not just the feature, is to work with dynamic server meshing, not necessarily to have all the buildings instanced. They could, but that's a choice they have to make. Do they want to just instance it now, or do they want to wait till dynamic is in and they can just dynamically move the interiors to a different server?
The hard part with the habs is the half of the habs in game in landing zones have windows that look out into the environment. So instancing that creates a challenge. Do you put a render to texture at every window?
Oh, that's right. Because I thought of that because everybody. Yeah. The instant hangars are not in the location of the hangar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so
I forgot about that.
It's easy to do for Lorville and Area 18 because you don't have a window looking out into the world.
You do after you come out of the pod because there's one in the hallway.
Yeah, but that's the thing is it's not like you request your pod to be moved to a gateway,
right?
And so that's the issue. Now, I don't see them instancing habs for tech preview tests. I see the location devs adding more habs to the space that they already have available in order to expand it, but not for 4.0. Yeah. They're not going to delay 4.0 in order to prevent these issues by having devs work overtime for 4 weeks to try and get a bunch of habs in,
Yeah.
unless they somehow already had that planned and they're just turned off, which I kind of doubt, because they made a big
Yeah.
deal about adding more hospital beds and more hangars before when they did it.
Yeah. And when they talked about the final ISC before we got the hangers in, they said this is interesting tech that we could apply somewhere else in the game. Not that they did.
Mm-hmm.
So anything we talk about basically in this entire stream is like, as far as development goes, is post CitizenCon, which means probably mid next year. Most of the stuff for the rest of this year is already on the roadmap, and they know, and they're working on it, aka mostly just 4.0 stuff, just getting 4.0 to live. And then IE. There is very little, well, especially that we know of, but maybe there's a little bit more at CitizenCon that we don't know of. But there's
Mm-hmm.
very little unknown development for the rest of the year. And then they take their break, and then we have the kind of settling of the first quarter next year, and then we'll have Invictus and all that. So we don't like really get into like the chunky stuff if it wasn't already delayed from this year until about year half next year. So any like super big feature development will probably be farther down the road. Farther down the road. Like Tree said several times, what Benoit's saying here is specifically to unblock testing of the mesh itself. Not to help gameplay, not to hurt gameplay, not to circumnavigate gameplay, specifically to help test the mesh.
Yep.
All right, moving on. Observed several issues occurring with ASOPs during the high player count test, where the terminals would appear stuck, waiting for ships/hangars to be unstowed. After investigation, no backend issues were detected. Further investigation is underway. So that's a really interesting issue. One, they appeared stuck, but they weren't stuck. They were waiting for ships to
Mm-hmm.
unstow, but it wasn't a back end issue.
Interesting.
So, yeah, that's like,
Wait a
how
minute.
do you have those two
Our
things?
shit wasn't causing the problem?
Yeah.
Well, now what do we do?
It's like, wait, the hangars aren't the back? It's like we've had that's like everyone's in the office is got 2-4 PTSD.
This one's
3-2-4
funny to me.
piece. Some players were seeing quantum jumping through a server boundary, but never actually pivoted to the new authority, causing them to be effectively lost. And a
We
smoke monster came and ate them.
the new milestone in the game we have achieved. We have reached the 4th or 5th or 6th dimension. I don't know which one it was.
You have become dimensionless. Appeared as if no controls worked, stuck in the seat, etc. So it acted like a server crash. Investigation is underway, possibly related to the game servers being overwhelmed and not processing the authority transfer in time. He talked about this during his last ISC, one of the two kind of like big SCLs, not ISC, two of the big SCLs this year. We got Chad McKinney and then Benoit right after. Anyway, he talked about one of the biggest things for a server to do is bind and unbind, and they didn't unbind. That's like the base function needs to do. And the server didn't say, "Hey, server, here's your player." It's just basically like it ran away, and the server's like, "Where'd he go?"
I'm gonna hold on to him. I like this one. I'm gonna keep him.
I like this one. You're my friend now.
Mm-hmm.
And
You
games are
belong to
with
me
400
now.
players. A game server with 400 players went through a successful crash recovery.
That's
The
insane.
team cheered. A mesh server with 400 players on it continued to have 400 players connected after it crashed and recovered.
Yep.
This is what server meshing means. All your binds belong to us now. Large area network binds need optimization, as seen in multiple captures in all tests so far.
Large
I'm surprised
area
it doesn't have
network binds.
no idea what that actually means. I'm
Okay.
completely lost on it. I imagine. Like, I'm surprised it doesn't have a. This will be the focus of the next test.
Mm-hmm.
The test was scaled back down to 6 to 800, and left running for only 8 hours, not 24.
Oh, okay, that was longer.
Test E is the last test on the 324. Or it was 24. I swear. Maybe I'm thinking of 241 and not 242. Or 240, not 241. I was wrong. You were right.
I think they did it on. Yeah. They might not have integrated the entire build, but they might have. Yeah, they might not have gone from 3.24 to 3.24.1. They might have just integrated some quality of life things and fixes as part of that change, but not the whole patch.
Possibly. Last one on 324 tech preview stream, as we now have to merge back into the 4.0x development branch stream to continue the and continue. The team and I will give you all a huge or the team and I give you all a huge hand of applause for your help as we continue or as we collectively bid farewell to this code stream or to move forward to the next stages. The team is now assembling a series of fixes and optimizations for more meshing tests, but our next test will be performed along the rest of the 4.0.x mayhem. See you all at CitizenCon 2945, subsequently in Test F07 Benoit. So
the
he
big
keeps
question
saying
is
4.0.x, 4.0.x. He means 4.0. Like, it's very obvious by his, like, it's not 4.0.x mayhem, it's the 4.0 mayhem. It's just his way of terminologying it.
Mm-hmm.
It is very obvious by the context here.
The question is, when are we going to be doing test F? And are we going to be doing a test F on a 3.24.2, which is technically a 4.0.x? That's my question. Because I don't think they're going to wait to do another server meshing test until 4.0
Yeah, what they
goes
could do
live.
is wait till 4.0 out of Evo and then use that.
I don't know.
I know you don't like it because it kind of is a weird spot.
Yeah, I don't think they do that. I think that they're gonna run. They're gonna run it because I mean, 3.24.2 is a 4.0 patch. It's just
Code branch, yeah.
4.0 minus server meshing and the 4. Some of the 4.0 features. The things they could pull through.
Yeah.
So it's technically correct. The most important part of kind of correct. That's the question though. Like, are they going? Because I don't think they're going to. Because these are open tests. They're always open. And I don't think they're going to do an open test when on a full 4.0 build before it gets to that level of PTU testing. And I think they would probably test it on 3.24.2 after CitizenCon because that build will have been validated and out to live.
Yeah. I think yours makes more sense. But I also think they might want to do a 4.0, like a tech preview, but I don't know why they would tech preview it and not just open PTU it. So I think yours makes more sense. I'm still skeptical that they might try a 4.0 tech preview.
Yeah, we'll see.
I have no basis for it, but like
I just hope they resume quickly. Why is this lagging? Weird. So I wanted to bring this back up.
Makes sense a lot. That they would just like, okay, system comes over now. Let's get back to testing, and just use the 3.42. Yeah.
So I wanted to bring this back up because this is from a letter from the chairman from 2022. Now, obviously, this didn't age well in terms of the years.
No. There's no dates. Well, there's no dates on here.
Yeah.
There's a vague interpretation of a date, but there are no dates on here.
There's the date, 2022.
Vague interpretations of a date.
Okay.
Whether a dot is or is not below a number is irrelevant.
The thing that's interesting is the timeline has not changed. like a few little things got added in here, but the process hasn't changed. And here we are at the server meshing minimum viable product MVP 4.0, where we're about to get there, and we're doing the server meshing tech preview. Very first server mesh prototype. The aim is to get an early tech preview onto PTU. Well, they're doing it differently. It's a little later now. Server mesh release. This will be a static mesh of one single replication layer hybrid service, and what we have, and then 4 DGS nodes to simulate Stanton and Pyro. That's what they just tested in
Yep.
Evocati. 4 servers attached to one hybrid service as a shard.
And it was 2
The
and 2.
minimum viable product. Yeah,
We now
2 for
have
each.
the like we were actually on Pathfinders. We're like, is that 4 for both? Is it no? It's 2 for each, 4 in total.
And here's the part that almost nobody seems to know about, but it's right here and it's in multiple other things. Future plans are separating the replication layer, separating out because right now the separate replication layer is within the hybrid service. It's all in a lump with other services. And so they need to separate the replication layer out as well as the other services, so that way they can be horizontally scalable, not just the replication layer, all the other ones, as well as working on a dynamic DGS mesh that allows DGS nodes to dynamically scale up and down and split simulation into dynamic areas. So,
okay, so the thing I was like mentioning earlier is Azure Creation said you can't. The replication layer is the bottleneck because you have to have one talking to a whole bunch. Apparently, I also forgot about this. That is the thing. It is a horizontally scalable replication layer service.
yeah, that's why Ashes of Creation didn't use the replication layer model, because if you only have one replication layer, it has limitations. Obviously, we're seeing that they're testing it out right now. The point is to horizontally scale replication layers, just like you scale servers, in like what we're doing right now, in order to remove those limitations, or push that limitation farther down the line. But that's really hard to do. Hence where we are, when we are. That's that's why ESO, they have a replication layer type model, but it's limited to 900 players or something like that. I think it's 600 players, because it can't handle higher player counts, because the replication layer doesn't horizontally scale. They have one per shard, and so that's essentially, or one per mesh, and so that's the limitation of it. And so when people say, well, Ashes of Creation says the replication layer model doesn't work, it's because they're not talking about dynamic meshing where you have horizontally scalable replication layers, replicants. They're talking about a single one. So different things.
Yeah. Everyone will approach the problem differently, and everyone will say everyone else's is impossible because they don't see where their own designers have already, or where the other people's designers have already seen the same problem and said, we're going to do it this way. And not just because no one comes out and says, here's the diagram of everything we're about to do. And here's why it works and here's how it works. Even CIG, even the many server panel talks they've had, have not outlined exactly how. Like, they've never said how they're doing this scalable replication layer. They said it's going to exist, but this is a footnote in a letter from the chairman, which was posted in a weird spot in the year, and like you have to like follow the game pretty hardcore to see that.
Yeah. They've mentioned it here and a handful of other places, and unless you follow this sort of stuff with a fine-tooth comb, you wouldn't understand that that's how this works.
There's going to be no video essays from like generic server YouTubers picking up on that. Like, even if you're like a server dev that does video essays on server tech, you're not picking up that footnote. Like, it's just not happening.
I'm going to switch screens and we'll close those tabs and we'll open up the server or the CitizenCon stuff. 1 second.